Hello and welcome. This is the Insurance ProBlog Podcast, episode 407. I am Brandon Roberts.
And I am Brantley Whitley.
You are listening to the internet's favorite podcast about life insurance.
And other things.
Other things. And
today is one of those other things conversations.
Speaking of other things, if you would like to get started on adding security to your retirement portfolio, you should come reach out to us at theinsuranceproblog.com.
Yeah. But that can include life insurance too, just to make it more confusing.
That can absolutely include that, just to make life more confusing. And then thus completes the section of the podcast where we talk about life insurance today.
That's right. We've thoroughly confused everyone in the first minute and a half, and they're going, there's other things that are probably more interesting.
Those guys talk a lot, and they're kind of monotone, so.
But stay tuned, because we got some interesting stuff for you today.
There is. If you like theoretical constructs of portfolio building in ways that are a little obtuse and dense, we have a treat.
At a macro level.
Yes.
This is not about micro.
No.
We're not talking about specific anything. We're just talking about macro level portfolio management in the sense of portfolio being all of your liquid assets.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna throw something out at you that I think is quite novel.
Okay.
Risk has a cost.
Ooh. You should write a book. That's basically our entire core message.
Yes.
Wrapped up into a statement. We should trademark that. Someone else probably already has a trademark.
I laugh for all sorts of reasons that we won't disclose publicly.
We'll find out later they have a trademark after we've spent lots of money building something, and then they threaten to sue us.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, just saying, not that that's ever happened, but
they will ram you out of your spot.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. So,
yes,
risk has a cost.
It does, and I think the best way to capture the concept that I'm shooting for today is to think about it like this. Most of the time, let's go all the way back to the early years of the training about being an investment salesperson, a financial advisor, any of those things. So somebody who's going to go out and try to convince somebody that they should take their dollars saved and put them with you, and talk about their savings goals.
Right.
And where they are on track.
And for you and I, it's relevant because many people may not know this, but at least when you and I came into the life insurance industry, that was all wrapped up together.
Yep.
Life insurance and investment was, you ended up doing both.
I had an investment license before I had an insurance license.
Yeah, I didn't, but soon after.
Mm-hmm. So when we would look at somebody's circumstances and determine how on track they were to reach the retirement goals that they were targeting.
Yep.
Most of the time, we would find that they were probably going to fall short.
What?
Yeah, it's amazing how that goes.
You mean when I was doing proposals for people that were 23 and said they were going to retire at 50 and they made $24,000 a year and it told them they needed to save $45,000 a month? They could do it.
I mean, that one's crazy, but I'm talking about people who are 45, saving $5,000 a year.
Yeah.
Trying to retire at 65 with $50,000 saved so far. Going
right.
We got a little bit of a gap.
Right. Exactly.
But
that's more common.
When these situations arose, I was trained that you basically can give them a couple of different options. One option is they save more. No one liked that one. The other option was that they waited longer to retire. Also fairly unpopular.
Very unpopular.
And then the other one was you could just take on more risk. That one
sounds good.
That one had an appeal because it didn't involve two other things they didn't like all that much.
That's right. It didn't involve them having to make any sacrifices in the present.
Yeah. The other thing that generally did for the advisor was it was a door opening to say, hey, you bring the money over here with me and I'll get you a better return and I'll right the ship for you.
Right. Look at this mountain chart.
Uh-huh. How are we going to right the ship when you're woefully behind and not saving enough? Well, I don't know.
We're going to buy some of those 12% mutual funds. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
So the problem, the insidiousness to you could just take on more risk discussion.
Mm-hmm.
From a fundamental standpoint, zoomed way, way out, the whole concept was, look, if your portfolio is set up in such a way that you're only averaging, let's say, 6% per year,
mm-hmm.
and we instead get you more like 8%, which is what the S&P 500 has averaged from this fictitious point to that fictitious point.
Right.
You look at all the extra money that you'll have. So all you got to do is take on more risk. That will get you more money.
Right.
And there's a certain amount of celebration that we have as Americans regarding that whole concept.
Yep.
We love the risk takers.
Yep.
We like what they do. We love that story of the person who down and out, bet it all, and made it big.
Yep.
So there's a number of people who are already pretty set up to gravitate to that idea. The problem, the really big...
And in all fairness, the numbers that are being shown are not inaccurate.
No, I mean, 8% compounding is gonna land at a bigger overall pile of cash than 6% compounding.
And I can show you historically where that's happened. So, in the past, by the way. But
right.
I mean...
Yes.
I'm not saying it can't happen again. I'm just saying you always have to sort of take that into consideration.
Yeah.
That's why they have that little disclosure at the bottom that says past performance does not indicate. Anyway.
Right. So the underlying issue, though, that we were not being honest about with these people is that...
For the record, we didn't know we weren't being honest, but...
Yes. Right. Yes, there's that. We were told this is the way it worked, and we were dumb enough to believe it for a while. And the problem that we run into with all of this is we are completely ignoring the fact that additional risk is a cost that we have to bear.
Right.
What I mean by that is we are essentially widening the range of possibilities when we take on more risk. Yes, there is a chance that we will land higher in terms of economic attainment by taking on more risk.
Right.
But there's also a chance that we land lower.
Mm-hmm.
Because more risk will assume more volatility. And the really complicated and, quite frankly, failure-prone aspect of the entire model is that it doesn't take into account a number of possible scenarios that are extremely likely to unfold.
Right.
Because they're not things that we traditionally think about, because we're so stuck in the mindset of, well, yeah, if you change your portfolio from 60-40 bonds, for example, to 80-20 bonds or 80-20 stocks.
Right.
Or let's say 100% S&P 500.
Mm-hmm.
Not a general recommendation most people would make, but let's just pretend that we go in that direction because we need to up the ante on the risk profile.
Yep.
Not only is there a wider chance now that you could do a lot better or a lot worse, but there's also a really good chance that at some point you're going to freak out.
Yep.
And not stay the course.
Yeah, because when you run those hypothetical, or I guess historic, I wouldn't say hypothetical, because if you look at the only data we can use really is past data.
Yep.
To look at actual performance. We don't know what anything's going to do in the future, actually. So when you look at those, one of the things I always pay attention to is what's the worst year?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can look at maximum drawdown, but that's usually a point in time.
So it's like one day, one particularly bad day,
or one particular month or 2 month period or something like that. But I always look at like annual, like what's the worst year over that time frame that something has. And in your example, something obviously that's more volatile, that has more equity exposure, is going to have a much lower or greater number, I guess, depending on how you look at it. It's going to have a much larger negative number in any given year than a more conservatively blended portfolio, I guess. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Because in concept, the conservatively blended portfolio should buffer some of those bad times.
Correct.
That's the theory.
Yeah. And it proves out depending on how you do that. I won't get into the particulars of that because that's way beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But the variation from top to bottom is wide in a portfolio that takes on more risk.
Yep.
I don't think that's big news to anyone, but it matters.
It's not big news, but I think a lot of people pedal through life without any real understanding.
Right.
Like it's one of those, yeah, I get it. It's more risky. But they don't really understand that unless they live through the moment of, I had $1 million yesterday and or the beginning of this year, and now I have $850,000.
Right. And I'll carry your little scenario one further, because I think this is the key to that. You have to sort of teleport yourself to that moment in time and go, okay. Because most people's sort of surface level answer is, well, what? I mean, market goes up and down. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Any asset that you own will go up and down in value for the most part, unless it's something, like life insurance, or it's in a bank or a fixed annuity, which obviously you're accepting the fact that you're going to have a lower average rate of return over time.
Yep.
When you do those things, no big surprise to anyone. But what if your sole method, I'm going to bring this around here. What if your only method for generating retirement income is that you were going to withdraw money from that account, your retirement account that's gone from $1 million to $850 at the end of that year that you realize it's $850? So that's December 31st, and you retired right after Christmas, so you're going to need your first account withdrawals in January of the next of the following year.
Right.
And now you have 15% less.
Yep. Which for most of us would mean you should take 15% less income.
Right.
And
but that number doesn't work because that's what you need.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Well, worse. Even worse as a possibility is you start retirement before the big reduction, and you started withdrawing as if you had $1 million portfolio, but then you have this 15% correction, which you didn't know was going to happen.
Right.
And now you've compounded the problem, because not only have you taken money out, but you also have less money.
Right.
And the difficult thing for most people to really conceptualize in this, because we love to run these things in models like Excel spreadsheets, where we're always assuming there's just some sort of interest rate factor that's being applied to the cash. That's not how owning stocks works.
Right.
Stocks are redeemed at value.
Let me add to that. That's not how owning any asset other than the things I listed works.
Yeah. CDs, life insurance, annuities, everything else is going to, real estate. Everything else is going to fluctuate in value, and it's all a matter of redeeming at value, which means if it is appreciated, decent time to sell.
Right.
But if it has gone down in value, well, it's not so great.
Right.
And that is a tricky thing to manage, especially when trying to use it as retirement income.
Exactly.
So there's a volatility to pricing and when will be a good time to redeem. That volatility gets higher the more risk you attempt to take on.
Correct.
Which makes timing significantly more important. And as most people, I think, tend to develop as an opinion as time goes on, trying to time the buying and selling of assets, especially on the stock market, is extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm. And I would argue with something like real estate even. I mean, you think about what if your plan was, I got tons of equity in my house in 2007. And so when I retire, I'm going to sell that. I'm going to buy a much cheaper place, pay cash for it, and add to my overall savings because I got tons of cash. That happened to plenty of people, by the way. Because there are lots of people who sell their sort of family home when they retire.
Downsize and cash out equity.
Of course. But 2008 came and it was Your house that was worth $500,000 a year before now will only sell for $350,000.
Mm-hmm.
That happened all over the country.
Yep. It did.
Or just won't sell at all.
Yep. So to come back to this risk aspect, we can take various risk values of assets across however many different assets you choose to put in your retirement portfolio.
Yep.
And we can create a sort of line in the sand that says, okay, this is probably the optimal blend in order to get the most out of each piece.
Right.
Given its relative safety or relative riskiness. And we can even do that in an income scenario that says this is the right balance to achieve what will most likely be the most income you can wring out of this thing while balancing safety and risk.
Yep.
Which is to say that if that income is inadequate for our needs, the idea of taking on more risk, which was the old school traditional advice, is highly inadvisable. Because the cost of that additional risk, expressed as chances that our income will actually go down because the risk of a result that is less than we are shooting for is now much higher, is something we have to take into account.
Right.
And it's not something a lot of traditional advisors bring up or think about, because the training is more, well, if you don't have enough money, you try to make it up by taking on more risk.
Right.
And it doesn't work.
And of the three things you talked about earlier, these are not new concepts to us. We've been talking about these things for how long we've been doing the podcast?
Over a decade.
12
Over
and
a
a half
decade.
years or something like that. That's the return is the lever that you can't control.
Yep.
You have, well, I shouldn't say you can't at all, but you have the least amount of control.
You have a little bit of influence over what it can be. Obviously, right. if you change the portfolio mix, there is a chance you can nudge return in certain directions.
Right. But that optimization you're talking about, let's send everyone into the stratosphere. It's called the efficient frontier.
Yeah.
It's fancy term.
And it's really,
if we could show you something graphically, which we can't do in a podcast, but we could illustrate it. But
can show you that just like we can those air quotes we've always talked about.
Yep. But just explain it in common terms so people can understand what we're talking about.
Think about it. Think about it almost. I realize if you were to look it up and see a much more academic sort of explanation of it, it wouldn't quite fall this simply. So there's some nuance to this, but think about it as like the old school scatter plot in line of best fit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I realize it's not identically the same, but
everyone knows that, Brandon. Come on.
But conceptually, I think people will get it at this point. So you have data points that are going to fall above and below the line of best fit. And the line of best fit is basically an average of what's going on. And think about the data points being risk versus return.
Right.
So as risk increases, return potentially increases, but there's a lot of volatility to it. So there are going to be data points on the chart as we go further out and up that are much more all over the place.
Yep.
And if we draw that line of best fit, it's going to take sort of the average. It's going to balance out the right unit of risk for the most optimal amount of return.
Right.
And falling on that line is basically where we want to be, versus trying to be way more risk.
It kind of ends up looking like if you trace it, it kind of ends up being from memory. I'm doing this for memory. It's like a horizontal parabola, right?
Correct. So that's the nuanced part here, where it's not a neat line of best fit, because those tend to be linear.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing instead is a line with a positive slope to a point, and then it turns.
Yep.
And what we see is that risk, if we think of risk as a unit of additional consumption, so we take on more risk, there's a diminishing return to that with respect to what we can expect to achieve from growth in our assets.
Right.
More risk does not necessarily mean we will always end up in a better place, and better meaning we've got more money.
Right. In this case, I mean, you could do this analysis with any sort of. I was thinking about this. You could do this with really anything in life that has where you can set definite terms as it relates to expected outcome.
Yep.
But that was a long-winded way to get around to our point.
There's one more thing. Okay. One more thing that is kind of underlying all of this that's important to understand. So yes, as we move more of our portfolio into stocks, we will generally get a little bump in expected rate of return over a low risk portfolio. But again, the return of that is diminishing, and it's not long before we get to a point where it no longer works. But what I mean by that is, let's say you've got a portfolio that's averaged 5% per year. That is highly comprised of things like bonds and cash. And you decide, I need to do more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So you very much shake up the asset mix to stocks.
Yep.
I don't think it's all that unreasonable to expect that you could move from 5 to 6 relatively easily.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not all that unheard of or unreasonable to say 5 to 7 is also good. Solidly expected. 5 to 8 starts to get a little more iffy, and 5 to 9 is virtually no.
Right.
And we've shown that data before.
Yep.
To point out that trying to move up the ladder, once you get to like an 8% rate of return expectation,
your probability
the probability of success drops close to zero quickly.
Yeah. Right. So now take everything that we've done over the past 23 minutes.
Yes.
And transfer it to, what does this mean for income?
Actionable things you can do.
Well, yes. In terms of income, because we're just talking about raw, thus far, all we've talked about is just raw rates of return. But how does this relate to the point that we're trying to make here about income?
You buy annuities.
Well, there's your answer.
No,
well, you or something that behaves like annuities, which there aren't exactly other things that behave with the same protections and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, there are some things that you could do. In other words,
if you just listed all the things that annuities do and didn't call it an annuity,
yeah,
it would still have the same effect, is my point.
Right. And there are some assets that, while they're not as solidly guaranteed as annuities, they start to incorporate some of this aspect.
Right.
So the tongue-in-cheek point behind annuities here is when you put an annuity in a portfolio for retirement for income generation purposes, there is absolutely a lower expected rate of return we typically get from that.
Yep.
But what we also achieve is an increase of the lower level, if you will. So we're getting rid of some of the upper possibilities, but we're also eliminating a lot of the lower possibilities. And
in terms of expected outcome.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So the income that is produced by an annuity is guaranteed in most cases.
Right.
So we're not worried about the fluctuation of value of the annuity. It can go up, it can go down, it doesn't matter. The income is going to be the same.
Yep.
So that puts a certain stop to the volatility that we have to worry about when we're just inside the market. And the silly argument against annuities is that, well, the rate of return is less than if we just bought stocks, for example.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that argument,
no one's arguing that, by the way.
Yeah, right. We're not on the counterclaim there. We're not saying, oh no, the rate of return is better. That's not what we're saying. That's never been what we're saying.
Nice job making an argument that no one was winning an argument that no one was making.
We have always been saying from the very, very beginning that there is more potential income to be extracted from these assets.
Yeah.
Life insurance and annuities, than we think is the case if you just go out and buy stocks. Because the volatility of just owning stocks, or a stocks and bond mix, because bonds are not as safe as you think.
Right.
So,
well, it's just the certainty of the income. the stability of the income.
That stability eliminates range, which most people think they don't like, because that would infer a certain degree of, oh, I'm going to become less wealthy, and I don't like that. But what we've been advocating for over a decade now is your net worth balance might not be as high.
Yeah.
But the income that you generate will most likely be not only higher, but a whole lot more predictable.
Yep.
And I think you're going to live a much better life.
That's really what you want.
I think you're going to live a much better life if you've got more income generation capabilities and more assurance that the income you are generating can solidly happen year after year after year.
Right. In a scenario where, again, broadly speaking, a portion of your assets are down significantly in any given year, you're not forced to take all of the money you need to live, i.e. income, we'll call it income, you can derive it in multiple different ways, from the asset that is down in value. Or maybe you still have to take some from there, but you don't have to take as much because it's not because not everything is there. You've got the annuity that provides some base level of income.
Yeah.
So in a scenario where you need $100,000 a year, let's just say, to live the life that you've decided you want to live in retirement. If you have to sell $100,000 worth of assets that are down in value 15%, going back to your original example, that has a much greater impact than you having to just sell $50,000 because you got $50,000 that comes from an annuity.
Yeah.
Or some other source of income that is steady and dependable and always going to be there.
So what you're saying is you can mix these things together and get a much better result.
Yep.
Because nobody was saying...
I don't mean better in that you're always going to have more money that way. I just mean better in the sense of the probability that you're not going to run out of money.
Well, in many respects, in many respects, doing this is shifting the efficient frontier up. So what we're effectively doing is we're creating more of what we want from lower risk profiles.
Right.
We're most affecting the curve on the left side of the scale.
Yep.
So that means we can get more meaningful gain out of a lower risk profile portfolio.
Right.
Still hard to influence it as we get out on the right end of this thing.
Yep.
It's just hard to do. But we can get more out of a lower risk profile.
Yeah.
And again, it's still going to have positive slope. And the overall trend that there's higher gain from higher risk, that still exists, but it's still very widely volatile.
Well, and if you run a model of this where you model tons of different market scenarios over time, thousands, if you model thousands of them, half the time the higher risk portfolio, the one that does not include annuities, half the time it'll be better. You would have been better just doing that.
Yeah.
But half the time it's worse.
You don't know which side of the coin you're going to land
on. That's my point.
And if you decide to go the riskier bet and it turns out the opposite side of the coin you wanted to be on, you don't get to go back and try it again.
Right. Exactly. See, we finally landed the plane.
It's not a carnival game.
No.
If you lose, you don't get to throw down another $5 and take another crack at it.
Well, it always reminds me of I'm going to get it wrong. I always want to attribute this to P.T. Barnum, but I'm not sure that it's Barnum who said this, but it was like, at least half the money I spend on advertising is worthless.
Yeah.
If I only knew which half.
Yeah.
That's just one of those unknowable things. We don't know over a given period of time, which is going to be very specific to you as a person as to what your time frame is. What's going to happen? You just don't know.
Right. But
But we do know that half the time it probably won't be as good as you thought it was going to be.
Right. And we can also significantly increase the lower risk side of the scale.
Right.
And that improves a lot of people's lives in retirement.
Yep.
Now, the one thing it cannot do, it absolutely cannot fix, is the chronic undersaved.
Right.
So
there's nothing that can fix that.
So no changing the blend of a portfolio risk is going to change somebody who doesn't have a lot of money and isn't going to save a lot of money.
Right.
That doesn't go anywhere. But what it does mean...
What? You mean we don't have any magic that we can just sprinkle on and fix that problem?
What it does mean, when we look at somebody and say, you're not on track,
right,
is that we take the let's take more risk option off the table.
Right.
Because it was a foolish recommendation from the beginning.
That's our opinion.
It just is. So,
yeah,
I think that's everything we dare say today.
I believe
as
so.
People look at this and go, I might have to re-listen to that.
Let me get out a piece of paper and start drawing these things. All right.
But ultimately, the idea is more money with less risk.
Right.
Which is not infinitely accomplishable, by the way. But there are ways to make variations to the portfolio that will provide more assurance and generally more income with a lower risk profile. We've done it for a long time.
Yep.
And if you want to know more, theinsuranceproblog.com is where you can go to get more on that.
Just click the little contact us link up there at the top and send us a message and we'll get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And with that, I am Brandon Roberts.
And I am Brantley Whitley.
And we will see you next week.